everybody. Happy Sunday. Hope everybody's had a great weekend and staying safe. Next week will be very interesting for US pertaining Joe Biden's inauguration. However, my video today is about Russia. And today has been a very busy day and a very important day in Russia. Navalny returned back to Russia. I've been watching 8-hour live broadcast, so I just finished watching that. And I wanted to provide synopsis, information, analysis, and everything else that pertains to what is exactly happening today. So, Navalny boarded a plane flight from Germany to fly to Moscow. He returned back to Russia on Russian airline Pobeda, which actually means victory, so it is a symbolic ticket bought. The flight was delayed. For one, there was a rowdy passenger on flight that had to be removed. Navalny got a special treatment and was taken directly by the vehicle to the airplane, bypassing everybody in the airport. There's some Russians that arrived in Germany with signs of, anti-Putin statements and everything like that, but they live in the West. Majority of the plane that was broadcast live was mostly journalists who flown with him. And of course, if Navalny didn't want that kind of publicity, he would have not announced his flight and everything else a couple of days prior, so everybody started booking those tickets. However, the only journalists that were allowed to fly on that flight were the ones who actually either have visa in Germany or reside in Germany because of coronavirus restrictions and everything else. Navalny flown with his wife and also his lawyer. And they were all very excited boarding the flight and saying that they're not afraid of anything, nothing will happen to him, he will not be detained or arrested once he lands in Moscow. While all this was going on, he was supposed to land at Vnukovo Russian airport. And airport started having a lot of people gathering. And keep in mind, there's two things. The airport is operational, so there's a lot of other flights happening. And those flights would be disrupted because the people were blocking the entryways. Number two, the world is under coronavirus pandemic, and it was not safe to have that many people close in proximity and blocking areas. A lot of people actually, the roadblocks started happening, but some people arrived 10 hours early, clearly, so that's why they were able to get in. But nevertheless, the airport changed their policy. Unless you have a ticket, you cannot enter the airport. You'd have to stay outside. One of his cohorts, Ludmila Sobol, she's also a lawyer, has been standing there as well. She has been detained now, but I'll explain all this process a little bit later. So given all the fact and publicity, Navalny wanted a circus. He wanted a big media publicity, big hooray, big return. He's a narcissist. And there's a few points to point out prior to all of this happening. Recently he gave an interview, which is actually an opposition YouTube channel. I just want to point out, and this is the reason why I think it's so important to point out an opposition channel. Navalny was talking how Angela Merkel, who is a leader of Germany, well, actually there's a new leader that just been chosen over the weekend, but at the time she is, she's still a leader of Germany, came to visit him in a hospital. He said that he was very pleased. He said it was a private conversation, so he's not going to discuss it. And the question was actually asked by the opposition journalist specifically who opposes Putin, so I just want to make sure this is very clear. He said, well, don't you think you could be observed as, being a foreign agent or dealing with foreign governments and everything like that? He's like, well, Putin discusses Merkel with Merkel and other politicians around the world, and then the journalist pointed out that, Putin is the president of Russia, and Navalny's like, I'm on the same level. So the man has never been elected as a president or anything like that, and you could see the narcissism in him even after the poisoning. The poisoning did occur, but there's a lot of questions asked about the poisoning too, because how come he recovered at 100% when Skripal still having issues, and everybody else who's been poisoned by Novichok had severe side effects? And it seemed Navalny, and I'm sure UK medical doctors and others are great in treating different conditions, especially having Salisbury close by, which actually has a military lab as well. They would be skilled to treat everything. But nevertheless, this is not a scope of this video pertaining to that portion. But nevertheless, Navalny has been poisoned. He also filed a complaint that there was no criminal case started pertaining to his poisoning and everything like that. And he was saying that because under Section 7, which is under European Court, he should not be detained and nothing should be happening. He was on probation, but the case should have been finished because he believes the case of Ivershey was done due for political reasons. So this was that, and he had high spirits on the plane, and everybody was cheering on and everything like that. So now, when it comes to landing, the plane was redirected to another airport in Moscow. So in that case, Navalny supporters could not greet him in full force, and they all complained, saying that it was disgusting, but at the same time, as I said, there is a coronavirus pandemic. People have to respect the fact that many can end up getting ill. It took a lot of lives, including Russia, even though I do believe Russia is undermining the amount of numbers and cases they actually have. This is a very popular scenario, but nevertheless, so that continues to be a problem. Russia also said there are some people now that have the super coronavirus, which is spreads more quickly, the one that came from UK. So there's a lot of issues, and the world is dealing with this. So Navalny, the health should come first, and this is why I think he should have not publicly announced when he's coming back. His close circle should have known, opposition should have known, and he also should have not encouraged people to go to the airport to greet him. As somebody who positions himself as a leader, you have to lead, and leading means saying no, don't come. Please send emails, please support me, but do not put anybody else at risk. Do not disrupt airport operations. It is the same parallel with Trump. Trump is saying, well, come to DC when people entered Capitol and everything like that. Well, when you say come to DC in other parts, people take it literally and enter Capitol, and a lot of things happen. In fact, people lost their lives. So Navalny was careless in that matter, because you know what? Yes, it's very nice to have giant publicity, but not at the risk of others and everything else. So this is that portion. So the plane has been directed to another international airport. He landed, he gave hooray, saying, he's ready to fight and everything like that. And once he reached the passport border control, he has been detained. I was saying all along he will be detained. There's two reasons why he was detained. On December 29th, there was actual order issued and a warrant for his arrest, because when he left, he was on probation. And apparently, and this is part of it, which is part true, part, issue. I have certain issues with it, but part of it is true. When the article was published in Lancet, which is a respectable medical journal, it said that Navalny fully recovered, and that was about a month ago. He should have returned to Russia or dealt with the probation portion of it, because once you're recovered, you have to attend him, because he had to sign in and everything like that. It's anyone in the world who's on probation. He's actually fortunate, well, he's misfortunate that he got poisoned and he was taken to Germany for treatment, but the portion of it when you're on probation, there's still certain obligations, even though a lot of people say the case against him was fabricated. But nevertheless, so this is a scenario, and that's why he's a warrant and he's been detained. There's three things that could happen to him now, of course. First thing, Russia can hold him for 48 hours. And it could be that they're detaining him now to ask him questions about a new criminal case that I pointed out before, that Russia started pertaining misappropriation of donated funds through his corruption fighting fund and donations and using for personal use. However, he denies that. And there's another portion. Recently, the interviews that I just mentioned earlier pertaining him comparing himself to Putin and being the leader, there's also another scenario that happened. While giving that interview, he was very specific. He never took funds from people's donations that donated for him to fight corruption. However, he admitted that he is sponsored by an individual of the person is Russian, but he resides in France and has French citizenship, who actually supports him fully. He does some work for him, but because Navalny lost his lawyer status and everything else, so he basically admits that he's sponsored by that person. But then the next question comes with that. Being sponsored by that person who is a French national, that means that you're taking foreign nationals' money. It doesn't matter what your descent is. For example, my descent is Eastern European, but I'm a Canadian national. My first priority is Canada. My country is Canada. And obviously, if somebody started funding another foreign national, that would be a big question to ask. So this is already an issue that I believe, but he's saying, well, the individual, lived in Russia and etc., but he's still a French national. At that point, you become a national of another country and you reside in another country. So you have Russian heritage, you could be originally from Russia, but the status, that's what it is. So that is questionable to begin with. So it is a question to ask, because when you're in politics, and even in US, in any country, if there is an issue of foreign donations or being sponsored, that would be a very big question pertaining to election. And it has nothing to do with Putin or anything else. It's foreign funded. So that's that. Also, the question remains, why in his 40s he cannot hold a real job or ever work? Also, his wife was at the part of the interview as well, and she was asked if she ever worked, and she could not answer one day she ever worked. And her children are already grown. I understand the young people staying at home, so she's never worked. When she was asked what is the most that she support her husband and what he does, she said yes, 100%. They said which part does she like or what does she dislike about Russia. All she could say is the word corruption. That reminded me of an interview that was done with Melania and Trump prior to him being elected in 2016, when she was asked what charity she would support, and she didn't know, but she said she's very charitable. It was the same type of idea. So she never done anything, she doesn't know, but then, you know, Navalny positions himself as the next president of Russia, yet his wife doesn't even know more besides the word corruption and what she supports. You know, it always makes me wonder. And, you know, I understand a female, and I don't want to give a double standard. I think everybody in our society should do something, volunteer, do anything with their life, you know, raising children. But in her case, also they did admit that their daughter does go to Stanford, which is U.S. university, which is not cheap. He tried to give her around so she gets a lot of free stuff, but they still have to pay for her residence and everything else, and she's sponsored by that French individual as well. So that always, you know, was kind of an interesting story. Navalny also admitted he was raised in a village and claims he doesn't know much about academia, and it's his wife that does. So my question ponders, if you don't know much about academia, and you say, you know, Russia, as a president, you don't even have an idea what Russian universities specialize in what. It always kind of makes me wonder when those kind of statements, and I'll give him credit because, let's say, in his case, he's recovering, given that he was poisoned and his mind might have not been as sharp, and I can respect that. So I'm not really going on about that about him, but his wife, she wasn't poisoned, and, you know, she's been married for him over 20 years, and she still doesn't have one cause besides the word corruption that she could mention, and then she kind of went silent about it. So anyways, this is that portion of it. So what will happen in Navalny going forward? Right now, the option is he would be detained for 48 hours for questioning pertaining to the first case. Number 2, he could actually end up being remanded in custody until January 29th hearing, because that's one of the hearings are set. Number 3, he could be given new charges, and they could hold him because they'll say he's a flight risk, even though I don't think he is, given the fact that he will not make any money, and I think his sponsorship with that individual from France is only good when the agreement is he's fighting Kremlin and Russia. Sitting from overseas is not going to do anything for him, and at the end of the day, I highly doubt he's any useful because, as I point out in other videos, all the dissident spots from the West, and talking about Russia already taking at full support, and there would never be presidents because, you know, Russian populace does not believe, you know, having an exiled individual to return to be their next president. That's not going to be working anyways. So this is the scenarios that are given there. Additionally, of course, Ukraine is all vocal supporting. Ukraine is supporting Navalny, but at the same time, there's another problem with Ukraine. At the beginning of the year, they passed the laws that everybody has to speak Ukrainian only. And this makes me wonder, because we are in a tolerant society in the West. I come from Canada, where we have 2 official languages, English and French. There's a lot of immigrants who speak other languages. There's also tons of government services offered in many languages that you could choose from when you're calling municipal offices, government offices, and Ukraine does that. So the only language you would have to be is Ukrainian. Isn't it one away from fascist? But yet, at the same time, Ukrainian government is actually in line with old Western Ukraine used to be, is supporting Hitler. So that would be exactly it, you know, like it's not Poland who is democratic and looking to do better. This is Ukraine now, and of course they support Navalny. And this is another factor about all this. Navalny's supporter opened a restaurant in Moscow which is called Stalin. It's a shawarma type of place. And the Russian government is trying to close it because there's been a lot of complaints because, you know, his staff is dressed in NKVD uniforms and everything else. And it is a concern. It also makes you wonder, you know, like, Navalny attracts very odd supporters. Stalin was a dictator. So it makes you wonder if Navalny addresses and attracts those type of people like Trump. That's what I pointed out. And I'm not comparing, Trump actually got into office since 2016, makes you wonder what Navalny's policies are, because those kind of supporters are very odd and at the same time very dangerous as well to have. And I have not heard Navalny live condemning any of that whatsoever. And he openly supports him. He doesn't work with Navalny, but he does openly support him. So this is one of the issues. Then another issue is I'm trying to understand Navalny. Even today in Navalny Lives, they keep mentioning when the Duma elections come up in the fall, even though Navalny is detained now, make sure that you do the smart voting that he designed and vote against any United Russia candidate or Putin candidate. But then I have a very interesting, what is Navalny's platform truly? Because in one way he says that he wants free world, and he wants to get rid of corruption and everything. But then isn't he in line with kind of communism, because everybody equal, collectivism? But then if everybody's equal, everybody has to work in order for society to be functional. That is what communist model was based on. That's why it wasn't successful, because not everybody pulls their weight. And I'm not advocating communism. I'm not pro-communist whatsoever. I believe in capitalism, but I also believe with democratic and social services flair attached to it. I'm somewhat classical liberal with certain democratic flair, if you can put it this way. I don't support Trump, but nevertheless. So given all that, how does he plan to do that when he never held a real job, or his wife never held a real job? And so how does they would be contributing members to society, just a political president and elite like others would be, and just collecting off everybody else's hard work? So this makes me wonder what their position is, because saying, we want anti-corruption, anti-everything, but if you don't work and you're sponsored by somebody, how does everybody else who doesn't have a sponsor supposed to live, but they don't want to work like him? So there's a lot of questions that ponder about his platform, which I'm even trying to understand. I'm not a fan of Navalny, but nevertheless. However, there's one interesting thing I want to point out, and I'm going to do a video because I think people should know. I've seen an interview today pertaining one individual. His last name is Solntsev, and he's the leader of Russian-founded libertarian parties that's not registered yet. And he seemed to be very well spoken. He obviously says there's need changes. He's not pro-Kremlin, obviously, but he seemed to be a very eloquent, intelligent speaker. He did not have posts like Navalny, or for example, one of Navalny's crews have been arrested 2 days ago because he posted on Twitter that government officials should be killed. He was actually detained now. He's actually in detainment now for statements like that. And they're saying he's very passionate in linguistics. The tweet was formed, did not actually mean to literally go and kill, but at the same time, he's saying, I'm not telling you not to do it. So in other words, if you translate it plus with a Russian flair, it could seem that he actually wants to have government officials murdered pretty much. But that's taking it a little further, but some people can read into it. The argument with him now is that he only has 500 followers on Twitter, so he did not reach that many masses. He has 3 young children, but then if you have 3 young children, why are you posting on Twitter? And I've seen it on Navalny Live too. They were suggesting and hoping that Putin's chef, I'm not saying he's a good person, that they're hoping he gets, he dies in Africa and not, natural cause of death. And that was said live on their YouTube channel. So anyway, so back to that Solntsev. I think he's young. He's in his early 30s. It seems he's well-spoken. He understands Russia needs change. Perhaps the West should look forward and follow him more. The party is not registered, but he actually has eloquent, intelligent thoughts. He was very well-spoken even about Navalny's situation. I actually enjoyed listening to him. It seems that he's very level-headed, wants change, represents a millennial generation, does not have narcissistic flair, does not behave like Navalny, so I think it's someone to watch too. So overall, please click like, please subscribe to my channel. You can read my articles under Communal News, Kristina Kitova. You can also tune in to 104.9 X-Key West Radio on Wednesdays after 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and I'm contributing journalist to the political and world news there, including defense. So please tune in, I would love that. Also, if you have any comments, I would love to have a discussion about this. If you have anything to add, please do. If you would like me to do any specific videos, or you have any specific questions about any type of political situation in Russia, of course, always willing to discuss, always interested to have collaborations. If anybody wants to collaborate on a video, or I've been guests on different podcasts, if anybody has any suggestions, always willing to do that too. Thank you again, and have a wonderful start tomorrow of the new week. Thanks again. Bye for now.